So, welcome to the BDI Sharperlight webinar aimed at Infor Q&A customers, but we will be talking about some general aspects as well. We'll do some introductions in a few minutes, but just before we get going, a couple of housekeeping things, which first of all, the main body of the content of the webinar is due to run through till about 11:15, and we'll have then questions for the remaining 15 minutes of the session. On the subject of questions, please use the chat bubble. There's a symbol above at the top of the screen. Using the chat facility, if you can either enter your questions as you're going along or save them up until we get to the Q&A session at the end. We'll be muting all lines, but if you did want to speak, please let us know either from the chat or using the raise your hand option. So let me do some brief introductions. I'll introduce myself in a moment, but I'm joined by Lee Robbins, who is an experienced ERP consultant. He's had positions at both Infor and as well as running Sun Systems Consultancy and BI and other reporting delivery at one of Infor's largest resellers, in fact, their largest reseller. He's BDI's principal and he's responsible for customer delivery. Lee's role today, he'll be doing most of the work, is to provide an overview of Sharperlight through demonstrations and other examples. And as I say, he'll be running most of the session today. My name is Rob Gibney, and I'm a non-exec director at BDI. I've previously held senior positions, including positions at Infor and more recently Oracle, and was also MD of an Infor or Systems Union reseller for a number of years as well. I'm going to be acting as coordinator today and managing the webinar on Lee's behalf. So, before we get going, just to let you know a little bit about BDI, really our purpose is to help customers get more from their investment, which are substantial investments in ERP, finance and other applications, with a focus on business process efficiency, analysis and reporting, and budgeting and forecasting. Today's session will be devoted almost entirely to a demonstration of solutions, but before that I'll do a brief overview of Sharperlight, and Lee will then take over and run the demonstration, which will include some generic features as well as some specific things that BDI have developed in terms of our expansion pack. In terms of Sharperlight, we're just going to advance the slide. Then starting at the bottom of this diagram, Sharperlight is designed to develop and deploy reports which may come from a number of data sources. These can be off-the-shelf systems such as Infor's Sun Systems, SAP Business One, etc. Can cover a wide range of areas, so it may involve asset management such as Maximo, possibly even HR, supply chain, planning, etc. And those applications are not limited to pre-built applications. They can also be ones that are bespoke or in-house developed as well. And using the Data Model Studio, which is on the left of the diagram, we are able to build data models for either off-the-shelf or bespoke applications, and you can combine financial and operational data into single reports or dashboards across any application, so you're not limited to one report from one system. Also, using the Foundry, which is also on the left, you can develop additional capabilities, and we'll be showing you a couple of examples of that in the budgeting area later on. Moving to the right of the diagram, materialized queries are there to help improve performance, particularly where there's very large volumes of data that needs to be reported against. And the scheduler is there to help distribution of reports via email and other notifications. And then looking at the top of the diagram, Reports are then created either using familiar Excel interfaces or through web clients. We fully support 64-bit off Microsoft Office, including Excel, and the comprehensive features that these reports can have extend through things like dashboards, heat maps, charts and gauges and so on. You're not just limited to sort of normal row and column. And in fact, these things are can be inbuilt to the reports rather than having to rely on Excel or other things to produce the charts and so on. Having flexible deployments options is especially important, of course, at this time, as ever more people are working remotely. Possibly this is a permanent change in some scenarios, and Sharperlight lends itself perfectly to be able to work remotely, either through Excel interface or more likely through a browser interface. So why BDI and Sharperlight? Well, there's a number of things. We've made some investments into Sharperlight. We have ready-to-use hosting, so that if you want to get deployed with Sharperlight very quickly, we have off-the-shelf hosting that you can use. You can install locally as well if you need or prefer that. We also offer flexible commercials, so that you can procure Sharperlight either on a traditional perpetual license and support model or on a pay-as-you-go SaaS type model, and we've got some very flexible options there. We also work and have a partnership ethos, so we work with a number of partners and would be very open to working with existing suppliers and other partners that you may already have to ensure that it's all about delivery and success rather than particular commercial arrangements. We've also invested in our expansion packs. You'll see examples through that later. And we've already been deploying Sharperlight in a number of customers and have proven expertise with some very large and well-known clients who would be able to give us appropriate references. So that's a brief overview of Sharperlight. I'd now like to hand over to Lee, who will be doing a demonstration of the solution. And as I said at the start, if you can use the chat bubble to ask any questions that you may have, and we'll take those at the end. You can either put them as you think as we're going along, so they don't get forgotten perhaps, or you can save them up and ask them at the end. So Lee, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Okay, good morning everybody, and welcome to the webinar. Right, as Rob has alluded, we're going to just have a brief look at what Sharperlight is all about and what we hope to be able to deliver to our customers, and hopefully including some of yourselves. So the first thing I want to show you is I want to deal with the fact that Sharperlight is able to at least replicate what you can already do with your existing Infor Q&A software. It's an important part of the migration process that existing skill sets and your existing reports are quite portable. What you can see on your screen at the moment is just a very straightforward listing of account codes. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there the Sharperlight query definition form. And you'll notice up the top we have our filtering section, and down the bottom left corner we have our selection fields, and then we have our outputs. So it's very similar to what you're used to with Q&A. The upside, of course, with that is, as I've intimated, the experienced users of Q&A will be able to transition, we believe, quite smoothly over to Sharperlight. So just wanted to show you this, really, just to deal with any concerns that you might have that with the whole existing report suite, you need to retrain everybody. There's an element of that, but as you can see here, it should be fairly straightforward. Just briefly, another report I wanted to show you. Probably the most common report that users of Q&A have is the summary balance function. So, for example, this figure here is taking the accounting period and some code ranges, and it's providing a balance on an Excel spreadsheet. And each of these various numbers is its own formula. You can see here quite clearly how this is easily replicated. This particular report takes our accounting period and it changes the actuals to the budgets depending on what the accounting period is that you've selected, and it kind of becomes admittedly quite basic forecasting report in the sense that it takes our actuals and then reports our remaining budgets and generates numbers from there. If I just unhide a couple of cells here, a couple of rows, sorry, you can see that I've shaded the accounting period and the ledger code, and also here in column F, I've got some code ranges that I use to filter into the report. As I say, over the years, I've come to learn that this is probably the single biggest use of Q&A, and it's important for us, or it's important for me, for you to understand that that kind of reporting is 100% supported. We don't have time to show you all the features, unfortunately, now, but I want you to be aware as well that Sharperlight fully supports drill downs and breakouts and expands. Some of the functionality that you will be used to with the existing Q&A executive software version 10, and indeed Q&A 11, which is the latest incarnation of Q&A. All that functionality has now been incorporated, albeit in a limited way, into Q&A 11. We're able to replicate all those features. The biggest one, and I'm going to be demonstrating this later because I believe a demonstration is better than just talking about it, but Sharperlight supports what we'll know as Q&A users as data send, which of course is the transformation of data from a spreadsheet, both transactional and referential, back into the host ERP solution. In Sharperlight, we call that write back, but I'll be demonstrating that to you in a short while. Okay, so we've looked at using our traditional Excel delivery, but let's see whether we can see what else we can do with Sharperlight. So just bear with me a second whilst I get the browser up and ready. So here's I'm using Chrome just for the record here, Google Chrome as a browser, but all the main browsers are supported, including mobile devices, tablets, etc. Now, what we have here is a number of different reports with a nice little menu structure that we've designed. These are obviously bespoke for each individual customer, but they're very easy to generate. So the first report I wanted to show you, I called it a director's pack, but essentially it's just a suite of reports. Very easy for an inexperienced user to use. We just simply select the accounting period that we wish to report upon. I'm choosing period 4 here for our demo data set. I'm going to submit that. Now, what you're seeing here is all real time, and I don't have any cached reports or any way of expediting the processes. It's important for us, for you as potential customers, to see the performance, and I think you'll agree there that the performance was pretty good. So this is a fairly standard report. It's a P&L type report with actual budget numbers on there, some forecasting, just usual variances, year to date and current period. And I've also broken down the expenditure on the right hand side into weeks, and I think you'll agree that this looks quite nice actually. And this is being delivered, as you can see, through a browser. Just down the bottom here, I've just done a simple, this is sort of taking the report that we saw in Excel a moment ago, and it's sort of slightly extending it a little bit. And you can see here the first 4 columns, which are in blue, that's our actual numbers. And then we've got budgets for the remaining periods of the year. And then we've done some calculations to generate our predicted, and we can compare that against our forecasts. So that's really quite useful. One of the areas that we've been developing with our reports, and we think this is one of the key differentiators between Q&A and Sharperlight, is the ability to write annotations, as we call it in Sharperlight, but notes would be a more familiar, a more traditional use of the functionality. So we can see here general repairs. Over on the right hand side, I've got a notes button, and I can simply click on the notes, and then I can write a message in my notes section, please review, or of course you can write in there whatever you wish, and we can save that, and then that will be saved against that particular row. And you'll notice that over here the note flag has now changed color. So anybody who's now reviewing this particular report on this particular accounting period will see a note, and they can deal with that as required. There's obviously lots of tabs here. We haven't got time, unfortunately, to look at all of them, but just very briefly, just gives you some different styles that we've got. This is looking at the previous 12 months, so it's multiple years. And I've also just given a couple of examples here of how we can use different trend lines. So different people like seeing this in different ways, hence the reason for having two on here. We've got the bar graph type, or there's a trend type here as well using the lines. And you can use either or none of them if you don't need them. But it's just a nice way of being able to graphically illustrate what's going on what otherwise looks like quite a busy page, and it just helps you concentrate the mind. Okay, so some other techniques we can use. So here we would be the maintenance budget holder, and this is giving me some numbers across various analysis areas of my area. Now it may be that we want to look at these numbers in more detail. So for example, here I've got parts and hire, and this is telling me that we've spent £52,000 during the period of during period 4. Well, if I click on this line, the software automatically detects that it's parts and hire, refreshes, and gives me an analysis of that without me having to do any further button clicking. I might even want to just select the grand total, the 82.5. Well, let's just click on there. The screen refreshes, and that will show our new number in a second. And there you go. So we get a breakdown of what makes up our numbers, and we can define as many layers as this as you wish, really. And you can have a whole preset load of drill downs, depending, of course, on what information you want to provide. Now I'm logged in as Lee Robbins, and for the purposes of this demo, Lee Robbins is effectively the administrator, so I get to see all these tabs, but the menus and the reports that are contained within them are completely user specific. So if I was the maintenance manager, I would log in and I would only see the maintenance and the maintenance prior year data. I wouldn't have access to all of the other tabs. So there's quite a high level of security that's built in here. Okay, so this is a typical delivery of a whole sort of suite of reports. So let's look at some other stuff. I've got some more traditional reports I wanted to show you. So here we've got a group P&L, and here you can see we've got the actual budget and variances year to date and current month. And again, we can write notes on these if we wish to do so. So that's a note that was already here. Look, this was done by me earlier on in the month, and whatever text is on there is available for everyone to see. So this is a profit and loss statement. I've got a very basic balance sheet here, and obviously we can write as many reports as you wish. Something that we do as a matter of course at Sharperlight, at BDI with the Sharperlight tool when we write our reports, is we don't actually make them company specific. What we try and do is we use an underlying generic coding structure, which is based on the IFRS coding structure. So that's an international standard of codes. And then that allows us to make our reports not only company agnostic, but also product agnostic as well. So Rob's already intimated at the start that we're not just dealing with Sun Systems, SAP Business One, and any number of other ERP systems is supported with Sharperlight. And the beauty of the reports that we write is they can be spread across all the different ERP systems. So a benefit of being a customer of BDI is we share all of our reports within our Foundry products, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail in a moment. And all our customers get the benefit of all of the different design and development work we do with all of our other customers. Okay, so just moving on then, let's look at some other reports. I want to look at some practical reports, so more day-to-day stuff. So here we've got a payment run. Now, most payment runs that systems do, they're not very useful. They often tell you who they're paying, but they don't really give you much more information than that. So here, bearing in mind this is being done online via a browser, I can enter some criteria, some filter criteria for the payment run. And once I've set my details, I then just submit that. Now, this particular data set has been purposely designed to have lots of payments. So you can see here, this proposed payment run has identified over 14,000 invoices totaling some £12.9 million. And it's actually been summarized quite nicely. So if I'm a manager and it's my responsibility to approve the payment run, not necessarily generate it, well, here I can see quite clearly what's going on. So this particular customer here, Airlink Systems, supplier, sorry, not customer, I do apologize. This particular supplier here, we're paying 9 invoices. It's telling me here that we're paying £8,000, which is actually the entire supply balance. It's letting me know how much I paid over the last 6 months and indeed over the last 12 months. And if I want to see a bit more detail, i.e. the invoices that make up this particular payment, I can simply click, or if this was on a touchscreen iPad, for example, I could just touch the icon, and then that will show me a drill down of all the various invoices. Within our Foundry product, which I'll be talking about in terms of budgeting later, we also have the ability to store invoices. So you'll actually be able to drill down to the invoices, but I'll talk to you more about that in a moment. So there's the actual invoice detail. I might be interested in looking at the supplier specific KPIs. So again, just a simple click of the button, and this is going to generate for us a number of little KPIs in the form of dashboards, where it just provides us information, or provides me as the manager information to help support this particular proposed payment. Now, if we had any invoices that were being forced for payment, in other words, they were being forced by another person and being paid in advance of their payment, their traditional payment details, then that information will be showed here over on the right. But I've just got here some aging details. So these invoices are all due for payment, but none of them are overdue by too much. And it also gives us an idea as to what the aging of the invoices is in terms of value, not just in terms of volumes of invoices. And we can tailor this to meet any particular requirements, but we've just designed this just to give a flavour as to the type of information that we can provide. A really useful feature that lots of customers that I've worked with over the years have been dying for their ERP PR system to show them, but unfortunately this hasn't been provided yet. We can see here that we got some alerts. So a crucial one is here on the bank details. This little red button here tells me that American Pan UK, this tells me that their bank details have been changed in the last X number of days. So a simple click of the red button, this is going to tell me that on the 18th of May, the user SOU has been into the bank details and made a change, and obviously that will now prompt me to go and deal with that particular change in terms of requesting evidence of the change being made. That might be in the form of a letter from a supplier or alternative methods, one of which we'll talk about in a moment. But that I find is really quite useful. It's not practical to check all these different suppliers, all their bank details, but I can see here in red which details have been changed. We've also got here some supplier details, so that might be address information or contact changes, and that's just highlighted here. This particular demo data set has been configured using self-billing certificates, and here I've got warnings that the expiry dates for the certificates is about to be breached, and this is going to tell me to deal with any consequences from that. So this is really quite useful, and once I'm happy with this, then I can then get my payment team to make the payment. I have some options here where I can generate this as a PDF document or in an HTML format, or indeed Excel. So the output options from here are quite generous and very useful. So that's a proposed payment run. Just a couple of other reports I want to briefly show you. We have developed a creditors KPI. So you saw a moment ago a supplier specific set of KPIs. This set of KPIs spans the entire ledger and just gives us a snapshot of where we're sitting. So you can see here I've got just under £14.5 million of outstanding invoices, and that's very nicely aged for us in terms of value. We also have that in terms of volumes of invoices as well. I've got 1,500 invoices that are on hold for one reason or another. 4 suppliers have had their bank details their supplier details changed in the last 4 days. But more relevantly, I've got 2 bank details that have been changed in the last 30 days. Just a simple double click. That will now drill down and show me who those 2 suppliers are. So these have been changed in the last 30 days. That's a slightly different metric to the previous report. But again, I can now go off and deal with the consequences of those. And there's some graphs here that show our top invoice counts and what our invoice counts have been over the previous 12 months, and lots of other different metrics and KPIs. And whilst we have a suite of these are easily configurable by not just our consultants, but also by customers alike. I've got some financial KPIs and also want to introduce something else to you as well. Here I'm looking at top 10 spends on my different store types, which is what this demo data set is made up of. But it also introduces heat maps, and Sharperlight uses Google heat maps, and this obviously here shows you a nice example of where you're incurring costs around the UK, if that's what your particular requirement is. But because this is Google Maps, we can also incorporate competitor information into this data set. So this data set is based on a business that does facilities management. And we got facilities management that's got different customers all over the UK, and we might want to link this data to competitor stores that might be in the area as well. And of course, as we drill down into these, so the map changes and becomes more refined and gives more granular information as we zoom in. And that's quite a nice feature. This is just an example of spend, but it could be used for any number of different scenarios. Here I've got some other expenditure. Rob mentioned at the start that we can connect to multiple systems. So this data set uses a product called Verisay, which is a contract planning system. But of course, it could be Proactis, it could be IPOS, or any number of products really. And this gives us an aged analysis of our spend. WON stands for work order numbers, or that might be purchase orders. So here we've got a number of outstanding orders, and we can age those backwards to give us a flavour for how old they are in the system. And there's other graphs and metrics which we can define as well. But these are very easily put together, and you might recall that I showed you earlier on the query definition form within Excel. Those query definition forms can actually be accessed via a browser as well. Obviously, remote working is going to be ever more important as we move forward. So the ability to very easily write reports if you're working from home or if you're working in a remote location is becoming more and more important. And we feel that's a big differentiator between Sharperlight and Infor Q&A, but other reporting tools as well. Okay, something that we've invested an awful lot of time and energy in at BDI is our expansion pack. And our expansion pack is made up of products that are ready to go. They can be hosted either on our hosting platforms or on premise if that's your preferred delivery mode. But in any event, we've developed a number of out-of-the-box solutions that require very little, if any, but very little localization per customer. And we can provide we can make these more corporate. So you can see on this screen here, for example, we've got a number of logos here, and we can choose different colors. So these actually reflect your business. But we've got a number of products. I'm going to show you our budgeting module, but just by way of an example, to give you a flavour of what we've got, and we can show these to you in more detail maybe another time. But we have you've seen a payment run report just a moment ago, but we have a payment selection product where we can do a proposed payment run, but we can add our invoices and remove invoices from the payment run. And then that payment run goes through approval processes before it's then actually sent back into the ERP product, whether it's Sun, SAP Business One, or any other. And then you actually complete the payment run within the product, but the invoice selection is taken outside, and it introduces all those wonderful things we saw earlier on. So that's all of the notifications of things like bank details, and we can also attach invoices and stuff like that. We have customer and supplier portals, so your customers will be able to log on and download their invoices, and also they'll be able to make payments to you directly, and your suppliers, they'll be able to log on to your web portal. You'll provide them with login information, and they will be able to see their specific KPIs. So you saw earlier on the payment report how we can do supplier specific KPIs. Well, your suppliers will actually be able to see that themselves. They'll see when you're going to be able to make payments to them. They'll see what their payment history is. They'll be able to see whether invoices are on hold or whether they've been approved or what the reason is why they're on hold. This will all be available to your suppliers, and will make their interaction with yourselves far more modern and a far less time and effort on your staff to deal with those queries. And we're quite excited by those. Here, though, we're going to be looking at budgeting, and what we've built here is a budgeting tool that allows us to create our own account code structure and analysis code and approval mode processes, including some maintenance options and permissions. And we've made this product agnostic. So whether you're Sun, SAP Business One, or any other ERP system, we link this using our IFRS codes back to your ERP solution, and this makes this very quick to deploy. So how does that work in practice? Well, let me just show you a simple budget. So I'm now going to select here. I'm going to select my data set of EMS, Europa Maintenance Limited, and I'm going to extract here my 2020 budgets, and I submit that, and then I'm going to receive a matrix of my budget information, and then my budget holder can look at this and review it and take any actions that are necessary. And of course, we can compare this as well with our actual data in the traditional reports that we've already seen. But something that I think differentiates what we can do with Sharperlight and what we've done at BDI is the ability for budget holders to update their budgets. Now we can build approval processes around this as well, and that's a given really. But I just wanted you to see the different types of methods we can use. So you'll notice here that the top two account codes 4101. There's two lines, neither of which have got any budget on at the moment. So, well, as a budget holder, how do I enter a budget? Well, method one, we can do that directly through the browser. So the user selects the edit button. That brings up their entry form. And what we're going to do here is we're going to enter £12,000, and I'm going to evenly spread that across all the accounting periods. You'll notice here there are different spreads that we can do. I'm going to do even as it's nice and simple and self-explanatory. So here's our £12,000. I'm going to submit this. And you can see that has instantly added £1,000 into each accounting period. Now, as I say, we can build robust approval processes for that. So there's no need to panic. You're not going to have your budget holders increasing their budgets without any recourse. So we can build approval processes into that. But just in terms of demonstrating the basic principle, you can see how that's done. I also talked at the start, and this is really important because this is something that is absolutely fundamental to Sharperlight in terms of how it compares to the Infor Q&A product. So I'm just going to flip over to an Excel spreadsheet, and you can see here I've just got a very traditional looking form where we are wishing to enter £5,000 per month against account code 4101, and this is what you would normally use your data send function. Well, this is the write back feature that I was talking about earlier on. So we click on execute write back, so that's just going to perform that task, and that's already now done. I'm now going to go back into my browser, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to refresh my page, and we'll see these zeros hopefully update. And there you go. You can now see we've got £5,000 in each of the accounting periods. So that, I hope, demonstrates to you how easy it is to update data using the write back facility. So I would argue in actual fact it's better than the existing Q&A data send, because we can also build in approval processes for that. At the moment, I find with Q&A it's too easy for users just to do a data send without any approval processes, and the data is just going straight into the ERP system. A lot of customers aren't particularly keen about that, and we can build that into here. Okay, I would like to spend the next 3 hours showing you all the things we can do with Sharperlight. I hope you've seen enough there to whet your appetite. After the session today, we are going to contact each of you and ask if you've got any questions. But that's where we're finishing for now. And I'd like to open the floor to you for any questions at all.
So just bear with us a second while we look at the questions that we've got. It looks like we may have lost some people at one point. So a couple of questions we've received. One was about hosting and different commercial models. One of the things I failed to mention in my introduction was we're working in partnership with 4 Business Solutions for our hosting solutions. So they've got lots of experience of hosting applications, Sun Systems, Microsoft, and others. And our hosting service has been done in conjunction with them. In terms of the commercial models, you can procure Sharperlight on an individual license basis and pay annual support, or you can pay on a monthly SaaS type model where we can combine our services and our expansion pack into a single sort of subscription. Obviously, it depends on specific situations as to what's the best solution, but you can start very low sort of commitment with Sharperlight, get it up and running. If you're just interested in having somebody write reports in Excel and distribute them, we can do that. But hopefully you've got an impression from today's session that Sharperlight is a completely comprehensive enterprise grade reporting solution, and it's used by all sorts of organizations all over the world, from very small to very large ones. So Lee, can you have a look at the questions? One of the questions, oh sorry, bear with me. Let me get that back up. One of the questions is about conversion of Infor Q&A reports, both version 10 and 11, into Sharperlight. Lee might add something in a minute, but my general comments on that are that this product is very, very similar. So there is no automated import or conversion routine from Q&A to Sharperlight, but given the similarities between the product, you may be interested to know that developers of Sharperlight, a lot of them came from Lasata, who were the original developers of Q&A when it was called Vision, based in Western Australia. But the reports, basically, we would normally work with you during the implementation and training phase to get your reports converted as part of the training and helping customers become aware of the product. We also have some lower cost resource expertise available to do bulk conversion of reports, and we would then Q&A before delivering back at them, pardon the pun, but we will Q&A those reports before delivering them back to you as part of an overall project.
Okay, so these are a bit more specific to the products now, so I'll try and deal with each of these in turn. So the group P&L, how would that show multiple business units? Well, it would be delivered in a similar way to what you would do now, in the sense that you would select multiple business units within the original query, and then you can use a filter to have, for example, a different business unit per column, for example. But there's a whole number of ways that you might want to display that. But in terms of supporting multiple business units, yes, absolutely. And we've got examples of where we've got significant numbers of business units that we can then consolidate together. In terms of whether, so someone's asking the question here, can the BU be dynamic or changeable? Yes, absolutely. You can do one of both ways. The report that I showed you was just effectively hard-coded to the PK1 business unit, but you can design your own filters, and they are available online as well, so that the user can select whichever business unit or whatever other filter information you want to provide to them. That could be accounting periods or date or business units or cost centers, whatever you want to provide, really. Okay, what other questions have we got? Okay, what drives the approval process? Well, that really depends on the makeup of the report. in terms of the budgeting software that we use, it would be a combination of the account code and the analysis codes would drive the approval process. But any number, you can design your own. You can design your own approval matrices, if that's what you wish to call them, and then it's multiple levels as well. So it's not just a number or a function goes to somebody and then is approved or rejected and then goes into the system. You can have a report that goes through multiple levels, or you may have a report that actually goes off to 2 or 3 different people. So, for example, you might be putting together a budget that's got 3 cost centers, where each cost center has its own approval matrix. So you can build those in. That's something that we would talk about with each customer on a one-by-one basis. Okay, is there a supplier maintenance from Sharperlight to Sun and an approval cycle? Yes, absolutely, and that's something that at BDI we have developed and it would be available to you immediately. And effectively, that's the supplier portal that I talked about. It doesn't have to be a supplier portal. You can just, of course, use it internally in your own organisation. But yes, in the same way that you saw me update the budget via the web form and also the Excel spreadsheet, you'll be able to update supplier details using a web form or an Excel spreadsheet in exactly the same way.
With a workflow if you want to run. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. We can build a workflow into there, and indeed with the supplier portal, it has to go through a workflow before it gets committed into the system. And again, that workflow, linking that to the previous question, those workflows can be as complex or as straightforward as you wish them to be. So we've been asked the question: is there a workflow behind it? And yes, absolutely, there is a workflow. And as I say, you can make that as complex or as simple as you wish. Most processes we tend to find are of the simple nature, but more complex workflows are supported, and notifications are done either via emails, and there's other social media connectivity that we can use as well. Somebody's asking, can we share the video of the demo? Yes, we will do. We'll make that available to everybody in due course. I know there were some sound issues earlier on, so we'll try and see whether we can clear some of those up. But yes, it will be available to everybody. Okay. I know that we've been having some issues with the sound. Not quite sure why that's causing some of you problems, so we apologise for that. But if anybody has got any other questions...
Wait a minute, there's a couple more here, Lee. So
oh, right, sorry.
There's one about distribution of reports. I mentioned the scheduler earlier, so that allows you to basically set up who receives what reports at what frequency, and you can decide whether they get generated at specific points in time. You know, for example, at the end of every day, or once a month, or once a week, end of every week, and sent out via email or other notifications. But also, of course, they're always available as self-service on the web if people prefer to receive the reports that way. And also dealing with large volumes of data, the software is very, very optimized. You should find it substantially faster than Q&A on a like-for-like basis. But even if that isn't fast enough for you, Sharperlight has a technique called a materialized query that allows it to periodically, and periodically could be every day, every week, or even every 5 minutes, update with new data, summary information, so to enable reports to run, pretty well instantaneously. So we deal with all volumes of data, and of course, we're not just talking about a single end user application. We're talking about a mixture of applications, so operational systems such as those you might find in manufacturing, distribution, social housing, charities, whatever it happens to be, as well as your ERP and core HR as well. Okay, so I think we've exhausted the questions. We've managed to give you perhaps 10 minutes of your lives back. Following the session, as Lee has already said, we will make a video of the session available to you, and we'll also follow up with you on a one-to-one basis to see if there's anything specifically that you'd like to discuss with us that you weren't able to raise on the call today. And hopefully the session has been worth your time. I wish you all the very, very best, and look forward to speaking to you soon. Thank you.